Hey, Lauren. I got your text early this morning, and so this is the first chance I've had to get back with you. So sorry, it's a little delayed. But I thought a video might be more helpful than trying to just explain through text about the happy unit circle. So here we go. So the unit circle tells us some really important information. The first thing we need to do is understand how it's split up. So it's first split up in group in 30-degree segments. And so I've got a 30-degree, a 60-degree, and then at 90 degrees. I've got a little spot in the middle of my computer screen that doesn't work, so sorry about that. 90 degrees. And then 30 more degrees is 120, 30 more degrees than that is 150. And then we're around to 180 and so on all the way around the unit circle. You may also, though, measure the unit circle in terms of radians. And so in that case, it's in sixths. So I'm going to go pi over 6, and then 2 pi's over 6, which would be pi over 3. And then 3 pi's over 6, which is pi over 2. 4 pi's over 6, which is 2/3 pi. 5 pi's over 6, which is 5/6 pi, and then 6 pi over 6, which is just pi. And continuing around on the bottom half of the unit circle as well. Then they also split it up into 45-degree measurements. So I would right in the middle would be 45 degrees, then 90, which we already had from the 30-degree splits. Then another 45 degrees would be 135 degrees. And then another 45 would be 180 degrees all the way around. And finally, in radians there, we've got pi over 4, then 2 pi's over 4, which is the same as pi over 2, 3 pi's over 4, and then 4 pi's over 4. And again, we can continue all the way around. Now it's called the unit circle because the first point out here is the 1 unit away from 0. So this is the point 1, 0. And what we find then, Lauren, is that every one of these little sections tells us the sine, the cosine, and tangent in a very organized way. So, for instance, it always goes, the ordered pair would be the cosine and then the sine of that angle. And we can remember that because cosine comes before sine in the alphabet, so just like alphabetical. And then if you look at it, this point is at 0, 1. And so if we just follow that up, 0, I'm going to put a 1 here, a 2 here, and a 3 here. And then each of those, everything is divided by 2. It's always the square root, but the square root of 1 is just 1. So square root of 1/2, or square root of 1 over 2 is 1/2. Square root of 2 over 2, and then square root of 3 over 2. And then the same thing works coming down the other side. So this point at the top of the unit circle would be the point 0, 1. And so since 0 is in the x position there, it comes down as 1/2 square root of 2 over 2, and then square root of 3 over 2. Now, this same pattern is going to work all the way around the unit circle. The only difference is when you look at the unit circle, we've got positive and negative x values, positive and negative y values. And so we find that everything is positive in this first quadrant. So that's why the A is there, because all of them are positive. S, sine, is positive over here. T, tangent, is positive down here in the third quadrant. And finally, C, cosine, is positive. That stands for all students take calculus, and it becomes a happy unit circle when we look at that. Now, I know I haven't explained everything, so if you've got questions, please feel free to ask. But even though this only tells us the cosine and the sine, we can find the tangent because tangent is always the sine divided by cosine. And so if you look at this first ordered pair here, if you found the sign 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2, if you got rid of that as a fraction, it would become 1 over the square root of 3. Now, we typically don't want to leave a radical in the denominator, so you may have learned this process called rationalize the denominator. And so this would end up as the square root of 3 over 3. So that would become the tangent of this point here. The tangent of the next point would be the square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2. Well, that just becomes a 1. So the tangent value here is a 1. And then over here, sine divided by cosine would be the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. That becomes just the square root of 3 over 1 or the square root of 3. And so you can find all three of those basic trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. Then that same pattern repeats over here on this side. It's just that now when you have an ordered pair, your x value would be negative and your y value would be positive. Therefore, your sine is positive, that's why it's an S, but your cosines and then your tangents would also be negative. Down here in the third quadrant, both pieces would be negative. That's why your tangent becomes positive, because when we take a negative divided by a negative, we get positive. And finally, over here in the fourth quadrant, we would have positive x's but negative y's. And so you would end up with positive cosines, negative sines, and then negative tangents. So that's the really, really quick version. I'm sure you've seen lots and lots of pictures of the unit circle with all of that information on it. But if you ever have any questions, I would be happy to talk about it with you some more, although it has been quite a few years since I've talked about the unit circle. So I may have to review a little myself. Lauren, I hope you're having a great weekend. If you've got a football game today, I hope you're enjoying that. And we love you and look forward to seeing you later. Bye.